Jackie Menjivar. Like Jackie Z mentioned, I work at MHA's national office. I'm the manager of peer and youth advocacy at MHA, which basically just means that I run the day-to-day of our different youth programs. With that, let's get rolling. All right, so just a quick reminder about our learning objectives for today. We're hoping to pack in a lot in a small amount of time, so bear with us. First, you'll be able to identify some personal entry points and pathways into advocacy. You'll hear directly from Asia and Travis about what their journeys look like getting involved in mental health advocacy, and hopefully that'll help you be able to kind of think of the multiple pathways that folks can take to get into this space. Then we'll recognize the critical role of adult allies. I know many of you joining may consider yourselves no longer in the youth demographic, which is totally fine, because that just means that you can be a supporter and an ally to folks who are doing this work, and helping support their efforts. We're also going to learn some practical strategies for translating data into compelling local advocacy messages, and that goes along with some of the tools and resources that we're going to share today for fostering that collaboration and being able to effectively kind of kickstart into mental health advocacy. Overall, that's a lot of words to say that this truly, we hope, will be a roadmap for advocacy, whether you are a young person hoping to get started and making a difference for mental health in your community, or you're an older adult who just wants to be able to support the young people in your life as they do that. All right, here we go. Okay, so who are we? So we're joined today by Travis and Asia. Deb was unfortunately unable to make it, but they are all members of the Young Leaders Council, Mental Health America's Young Leaders Council, or YLC. It's made up of a group of 10 young people from across the country. And when we say young people, it's 18 to 25 years old. They've created programs and initiatives or otherwise participated in ways that fill gaps in mental health support and resources in their own communities. So these are folks who have done this in action and really improved and influenced the mental health of the places that they live on a local level. Some more context for y'all. So we recently released, shout out in the chat if you've already seen this, but MHA recently released our State of Mental Health in America report. This is an annual report that we put out. It is one of the most comprehensive reports with data on mental health and state level rankings and for mental health and well-being in the United States. It's one of our biggest projects that we do, and it just has so much rich information and context about how different states are doing on this issue. Because as we know, different states take different approaches to some of these things. We have a lot of key findings, but specifically calling out some youth-related ones. Mental health among young people improved from 2023 to 2024, which is really exciting. The percentage of youth, that's ages 12 to 17, who experienced a major depressive episode decreased from 2023 to 2024, which is great. Also, the percentage of youth who were reporting serious thoughts of suicide decreased. So that is good news, and we want to celebrate that. However, that doesn't mean that young people aren't still struggling, because they are. 11.3% of youth ages 12 to 17 in the United States experienced a major depressive episode. That is 2.8 million young people. And that is a depressive episode with severe impairment. That means that it severely impacted their functioning in school, in work, at home. So people are struggling. I think it's important, even when we're talking about improvements that have been made, decreases in the prevalence, that still leaves us with millions of youth who are really not doing too well right now. You can check out the QR code if you want to dig deeper into the State of Mental Health in America report. We have youth rankings, overall rankings, as well as some more granular factors that you can look into. But because of some of those findings, we decided this year to do something a little different. In addition to the State of Mental Health in America report, we released for the first time ever our companion report, The Spotlight on Youth Mental Health Advocacy, How to Go from Data to Action. So this was sort of born out of the thought that often when you see your state's ranking, and especially if your state ranks particularly low, it can be very discouraging. You know, we really want to fight any feelings of hopelessness that can arise because no matter the starting point, there's always things you can do to try and improve your state's ranking, to try and improve your community's mental health. And a reminder that this occurs not just on the federal level, but at the state and local level as well. So this spotlight was co-authored by the YLC, and the kind of heart of it was that numbers with no action is or data with no action is just numbers on a page. So how would a young person take the data information that they find from the state of mental health and turn that into local community change? We go into how to translate numbers into compelling narratives. We have a decision maker directory with a template outreach letter. We have a step-by-step personal advocacy plan and lessons learned from our YLC members and their advocacy journeys. So sort of case studies and seeing how this happens in action. Again, overall, I think nowadays we could all use a little bit more hope and ways to empowered, empowered, even if it is on a smaller scale. So again, that QR code is there if you want to check out specifically the spotlight on youth mental health, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And then I'm going to just show you a little sneak peek of some of the stuff that you might be able to find in the report. This is one of our pages from the report on translating numbers into compelling narratives for change. This was written by one of our YLC members, Alex Sharlai, and I think he did a really great job at kind of breaking this down. When you see that California is about the prevalence of substance use disorder among adults in California is about on par with the national. That's 17.9% compared to 18% at the national. However, California ranks last place for the prevalence of adults with substance use disorder who did not receive treatment. So I think it's important when we're looking at these numbers, not just to look at them as like individual data points. We need to look at them in the greater context. And Alex did a really great job at pointing out that given the size of California's population, that translates to 5.38 million people who have a substance use disorder, roughly equivalent to the population of New Zealand. I didn't know this. And the vast majority of them are left without needed support. So again, check out those resources. Our YLC members worked so hard on this, and I think it really is worth it. I think they did a great job of kind of taking what can be a kind of overwhelming report and overwhelming wealth of information and putting it in a really digestible way, especially for young people. And this is an example of our sort of power mapping resource. We had this directory. Basically, the idea behind it was who has power to influence mental health in your community? Who has that decision-making sway? And then how do you then influence them? So this is an example talking about school boards. Again, as a reminder, this kind of action doesn't just occur on a national scale. It happens at your local school board meeting, right? So for each of our power holders, we give a short description of what they are. An example, this example was a really uplifting one I found from this past year. Following budget cuts, the jobs of 10 school mental health counselors were at risk until the school board voted to save them. And that was thanks in large part to the influence of community members, including students and teachers who showed up to those school board meetings to kind of attest to the value of those mental health counselors. And in the past year alone, the counselors served thousands of students, completed hundreds of crisis interventions, and referred 40 students for emergency care. So again, that's like one of those things that you don't think of it, but it is showing up for a school board meeting, making your voice heard. It can lead to thousands of students receiving mental health care that they wouldn't otherwise. I think it's important to keep in mind. And for every stakeholder, we also have some action steps. So what you can do immediately to try and get in contact with those folks and make your voice heard. Finally, I'm just going to wrap it up with one last resource, and then I'll hand it over to our amazing YLC members. But I'll talk briefly about our Supporting Young Minds campaign. This was formerly our Back to School campaign. And this is for any of those adult allies who are joining us today, who, again, are wondering how they can be supportive of the young people in their lives. And again, thinking about combating feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, helping young people build the resilience and agency, not just in an advocacy context, but in general. Helping them to encourage that leadership without taking over or you know, being overly involved in the process, and creating spaces where young people feel seen, heard, and valued. I'm realizing I don't have a QR code on this slide for this one, but it'll be in an upcoming slide. And this has some practical resources, including classroom resources for any educators who are with us today. So definitely worth checking out if you want to be a better ally to the young people in your community fighting for better mental health. All right, so just a quick wrap up. If you're wondering, where do I start? I want to get involved. Where do I start? You can begin by getting the data. Check out our State of Mental Health in America report to see those state rankings. Make a plan. Check out the Youth Spotlight with some of those practical step-by-step strategies for being able to influence the mental health of your community, as well as how to interpret some of that data in a way that's more digestible and compelling. And then finally, being an ally if you are an adult who wants to be a supporter. Check out the Supporting Young Minds campaign, and some of the resources they have there can be super helpful for guiding some of that. That's all I've got. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our YLC members. Like I mentioned before, our Spotlight on Youth Advocacy has what we're calling sort of case studies from the YLC members about their own personal advocacy journeys, how they got started, what impact they were able to make, advice that they have for other aspiring young leaders. So again, get a sneak peek here from Asia and Travis. They're going to share their own journeys, and then we'll discuss a little bit and what we can glean from them. Starting with Asia.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. It really means a lot for you guys to just show up and be in this space of mental health and learning more about what we've done. For the YLC, like we put a lot of time into this, as Jackie had said, because we just find it to be something really important, not only for us, but also for youth to be inspired to do what they can for their own advocacy journeys. So I guess where my advocacy journey started was in middle school. I think middle school is one of the hardest transitions that you'll ever go through in your life. I know I'm only 25, so I can't speak for more than 25 right now, but everyone's going through puberty. They're navigating relationships, romance, and friendships, trying to balance the pressures of like your family as well as like other academic external stuff while you're still trying to figure out who you are. This transition can feel really lonely. And so I remember that time in my life feeling a bit lonely, but I had a lot of healthy coping mechanisms thanks to my family, where like I had support systems. I also played soccer and I did music. So those things really helped me when I felt really stressed and overwhelmed. But I noticed that a lot of my friends didn't have those same outlets, or certain outlets weren't working for them the same way they worked for me. And so I can tell that like not having those outlets can really make you feel isolated. It can make you want to be the bully in the class or be bullied. And also that's when I felt like a lot of more mental health issues started to emerge. And at that time, I'm again not that old, but 10 years ago, I don't think that we talked about mental health the way that we talk about it now. So there was still like a gap in that. Like you know something's wrong with someone, but weren't really sure how to talk about it, and you didn't really know the resources of who to go to. And so, like, as any middle schooler could do, the most I would do is like be a friend to someone, try to be a support system, be someone to talk to and give advice. But even with that step, I realized like there was more that needed to be done that I couldn't provide on my own. There's more resources that needed to be out there for people my age struggling with that. So fast forward to high school. For high school was the first time I'd ever met someone in the field of mental health and like psychology. I met my first psychologist at my high school. Her name was Dr. Cosgrove. She was great. It was just awesome to see someone finally doing something in the field that was beyond just being a friend to someone. she was someone that I like looked up to because she had the knowledge and experience that actually impacted what I wanted to do going forward. So like at that moment, I said, "Ooh, I want to be a psychologist. I want to be a clinician and see how I can make an impact more than just, the day-to-day interactions of being a friend to someone." And so I remember around that time going on the internet, going on Google and researching how to be a psychologist. First thing I saw was 12 years of schooling. I was like, wow, this is a lot. This is a commitment, but it was a commitment that I was willing to take on. I was really passionate about mental health at this point, and I loved school. So I was like, fine, this is the route that I'm committing to. This is what I'm going to do. Moving forward to college, I went to American University. I majored in psychology and I also played soccer there. That's my healthy coping mechanism that just never went away. It's something I love. And it stayed with me forever. And so, in this point in my life, my first couple years in college, I think there was a lot of emphasis on making sure you I guess start your journey in the mental health field like immediately. So like looking for internships, trying to find different like avenues for mental health. And I found it really difficult because my schedule for soccer was really hard to balance an internship that was consistent. We had like games away and practices. So I was feeling a little hopeless at that point in finding something. But one of my teammates, she volunteered for this organization called Grassroots Health, which is a nonprofit organization in DC that brings college athletes together to teach health through sports. And that really intrigued me because I never had thought of psychology meshing with sports in the way that this organization did. And they also told me at this workshop that the organization had that there would also be free food. So I showed up, I hung out, but it was great. I was really intrigued how they put the two together. So since I've joined the organization, also, sorry, really quick stop. Is my background loud? Or can you guys, it's good? Okay, it got loud for me. But as I was going along this journey, whoever said free food for the win, yes, Megan, free food is always great. But while I was going on this journey, it was great to just see how health can be shown in a different way. I feel like up until that point, I had never known health outside of just the one-on-one interactions of therapy. That's probably the biggest thing at the time that was preached. But to think that there's another way that even me as a college athlete could have made a difference in going into middle schools and teaching health through sports, through different metaphors, was really exciting to me. And since then, that was about 7 years ago now, and I'm still with the organization. And I've loved the mission and I've loved being able to get deeper with the organization to really understand how to be an advocate for youth. I think also as I'm aging out of being a youth, it becomes a little different. You have like a different perspective and different angles where I truly at this point feel like every time I step into a classroom, I'm learning new things from them on what's going on in their life as well as new lingo. So if you guys have kids and have heard your kids say 6, 7, that is the new lingo that's going around right now. But yeah, it's just great to be part of an organization that has opened my eyes to a different way of being helpful in this mental health space, and I think especially in the times that we are in right now, we need more than ever more creative avenues and adaptive lenses to see health through. So in this organization, I learned not just as a volunteer, because now I'm a staff member, which has been great. I'm a excuse me, program coordinator with the organization, and it's great. I get to see it from different lenses and different angles, from the students telling me what they like and what's been going on with them, to parents who are telling me where their struggles are with health for themselves as well as their kids, to administrations and school members explaining like what's happening to our kids, what's going on with this particular class. And even on a community level in DC, one fun fact about my organization is we do a lot of work to make sure that the topics that we're teaching mesh really well with the community needs and what they want. So we'll have like focus groups and stuff to ask people, what do you guys want to see? And right now we do nutritional health, sexual health, and mental health with kids, again, through a very movement-based curriculum. And it's really like just amazing to see how much of a difference that approach makes in how kids pick up information and learn. So This is all to say, I've been with this organization for a long time, but I've also just been on this mental health advocacy journey for even longer. And it's been great to just see how it can change. Like the way that I initially envisioned this for myself is not the same as where it's at now. And I'm really glad for that because I know like this journey could have been really linear and I could have just like done my undergrad, master's, PhD, but I think just the way that life goes, it's taken me on another route where I've been able to learn even more about what empowers me to do the work I do, what I'm passionate about. And again, like I think without taking this route, I wouldn't have even found like the YLC group with Mental Health America and just seeing different ways to be an advocate in my space and for other people. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Asia. Thank you for sharing. It's such a powerful journey to see that kind of trajectory from volunteer to career, right? It really is a culmination of a lot of things. And I'll ask you some more questions about it here in a second. But before I do, I'm gonna pass it over to Travis to talk a little bit about his entry point and his journey in mental health.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, good. So, hello everybody. My name is Travis Alton. I'm a film director from St. Louis. I'm currently based in Atlanta, and right now I'm in the airport. So if y'all hear loud noises in the background, that's that. But give me a backstory of my journey. Where did I start? So long ago. But like Asia was saying, it really started for me in middle school where I was just like, okay, I'm getting bullied, but I'm not really getting the help that I need. So how can I, figure out a way to implement that into the schools? So I think going from middle school to high school, I noticed that there was like counselors there, but not mental health counselors. So I kind of my college advisor ended up becoming my mental health counselor, believe it or not. And we connected, and during that time I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. I was going from journalism to I think I went from like the newspaper, the yearbook, then I went from broadcast journalism, then I went to acting. And right when I stopped at acting, I'm like, oh my God, I think I want to be an actor. I started portraying these roles, and I had to really tap into a different side of myself and tap into it mentally and physically. And once I did that, I was just like, I want to get into acting. But then during my senior year of high school, I got the chance to direct and write my own stage play. And I feel like in that moment, once I got to tell my own story about how I was bullied and wanting to commit suicide and just all of these things that was on my mind. Once I told my story to the audience and felt like the audience reaction, I'm like, no, this is what I want to do. Like directing actors to kind of tell my story essentially. It was just amazing to see it in from the audience perspective. Sorry, that's a little loud, but it was amazing to see that from like the audience perspective and just to get the audience reaction to them like actually feeling my pain with me. And I felt that, and I was just like directing and writing is what I want to do. After I did that, I transitioned to Webster University where I majored in film, TV, screenwriting, and I got a certificate in entrepreneurship because I felt like it went in like a triangle. If I wanted to produce and tell my stories, I wanted to own my company as well. So I got it all in like a triangle. And I just started telling my stories. And each story that I was telling, I'm like, wow, this is all dealing with mental health, where I started from the very beginning of me wanting to promote, mental health and let everybody know that mental health is important, especially in the Black community, because I feel like a lot of Black people don't realize how important mental health is. And I feel like once one person is talking about it, everybody would, kind of hop on that train. So now to this day, I did get a major in film or a certificate in film, not a certificate, I'm tripping. I did get a bachelor's in film, and I learned more about film, but I'm like, I want to learn a little bit more about mental health and just psychology, period, because if I'm going to tell these stories about mental health, I want to learn about it as well. And I just started looking up different organizations, and I found Mental Health America. And then I applied for the Youth Leaders Council, and I was just so honored to get in because during the time of last year, I just kept getting no's and no's and no's. And in the film industry, you will get so many no's to the point where you just want to give up. And I feel like I kept going, but it was just when I got the yes from Mental Health America, I'm just like, this is my calling. That mental health is really, where I should be focusing on. And this is like I don't know, it was just my calling. I just felt the need to pursue mental health even more once Mental Health America accepted me. And so I'm just like, yeah, let me keep this going. So once I got accepted, here I am today, still telling stories through film, through my screenwriting, through producing, and just getting the word out that mental health is so important. So I hope that wasn't a lie, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Travis. Sorry, I was busy promoting your stuff in the chat. You'll see I dropped a link to Travis's website. You can check out some of the incredible work he's done.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the chat, but yeah.
Yeah, you're so fine. Yeah, so it is a unique entry point, that entry point of storytelling and filmmaking, similar to how Asia's entry point was sort of athletics and in some of those areas and school related. I think it's cool that you found your own entryway, your own sort of entry point. And I think that that's overall what I really hope folks can take away from this conversation that we're having, that there is no one correct way to be an advocate. There's no one correct way to support the mental health of yourself or the people around you. Like Asia said, like it can be a very linear path, but it doesn't have to be. And especially when we're talking about young people and young people getting involved in advocacy, I think it's so important to follow the passions, right? Like, follow the things that you're already interested in, the things you already care about, and how that can maybe help fuel your advocacy journey and help move that forward. I think it's really important. I'm gonna stop sharing slides now, so that we can have a little bit more of a chat. Jackie Z, I don't know if we can stop the slide share. Great. Yeah, so I have a few questions for our panelists to get the discussion started, but please, please drop any questions you have for Asia and Travis in the chat as we go on. But I'm going to start with a question that I think is relevant to a lot of folks who are joining us today, which is about adult allyship or older adult allyship. How how can how can adults be allies in these journeys? What have you experienced that's been helpful from older adults in your life? And conversely, what can be harmful? Like what do you think can sometimes folks can get wrong about trying to be supportive of mental health?
I can go. I think that's like a big question too. I would say that sometimes as an adult, especially the more removed I think that you become from adolescence, it's hard to understand and maybe put yourself in their shoes all the time. Um, but in the simplest terms, I can say just come at like youth with empathy, like being very open and receptive to just hearing them out and realizing that like things are changing, life is changing, they're experiencing different struggles and different, I guess, like different pressures that weren't always there for us growing up. So like even like I said, it's only been like, yeah, 10 years is kind of long. It's been 10 years at least since like middle school, and there's so many things that I learned from the students talking to them and just listening to them, that I never experienced, especially not in the same way that they did. With this age of social media and stuff too, I think being more understanding and trying to just like hear them out is going to be the most powerful thing that you can do. I think the way that you can go wrong is by coming at it with a little bit more of an aggressive stance or just like, you know, not giving them the space to talk. That probably is the worst thing that you can do.
I'm so sorry. I missed the question because yeah.
Totally fine. I know you're jet setting around. We were just talking about adult mentorship, intergenerational collaboration. What have the adults in your life gotten right, and what have they maybe gotten wrong or could get wrong when they're trying to support the young people in their lives, whether that's in their mental health journeys, like individual journeys, or their advocacy journeys. And totally fine if you don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, I feel like it would go off of what Asia said. I feel like just listening, honestly. Yeah, I'm just piggybacking off Asia.
Totally fine. Yeah. I mean, Asia did put it very well. And I think especially Asia, how you mentioned, like even in your like relative to some of the folks who might be joining us, like relatively short sort of time in this field, how things have already changed and evolved quickly. We got a question in the chat from Michael on that. Can you say more about what you're learning about youth, besides the lingo? What could have changed so much, given that folks probably will see you as young at 25, right? What do you think causes this rapid rate of change?
Yeah, I would say social media and just like technology is really making a difference in this wave. Like most of, even when it comes to like conflict and like just conversations that I have with kids. Oh, for context, like I work in middle schools on the daily day-to-day basis. Before this, I just came from like a sixth grade class, and we were just arguing about like something someone posted online and how it was disrespectful and stuff. But I realize a lot of conflict is coming from like interactions on social media and a lot less face-to-face time between students and peers. I think that makes a huge difference in just like how they deal with problems and the problems that are coming forward, because a lot of them do have an online community. They talk through it. They tell me like they're in these little spaces on Instagram or on TikTok. So there is a level of togetherness, but nothing beats in person like connections. And that's something that I think a lot of them are still lacking within their school communities and maybe in their family lives as well. So I would say that media and technology is really making that I guess is causing that change with students, because at its core I feel like the problems are similar, but where the problems are taking place, like in online versus like in person, make a huge difference on how they're like received.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes, the struggles are similar. Growing up is always a confusing, strange, overwhelming time. And especially in those transition periods, like you mentioned, middle school flashbacks. But now they're occurring. Like I couldn't imagine going through that in the social media landscape that young people exist today. It's just a totally different world. So I think that's important to keep in mind.
Wait, I have one last thing I just thought of. Sorry.
Yeah,
I think also to consider the biggest difference is like social media, something that like you can't get away from. I think when kids go home, they're still like versus I'd say like back in the day, you can go to school, you have your beef, you have your issues, you go home, you can at least be home with your family and, not think about it. But now if anything's happening on your phone and online, it's continuously being carried with you. You're thinking about it when you go home, you're going to bed, you're on your phone. Unless you have obviously parents who regulate that stuff, you don't have that. It's always on your mind, and it honestly like causes a lot of anxiety for students. There's not really any escape. I think the virtual world and like the real world just kind of like mesh together, and it's hard to escape when you have some problems.
yeah. I think it's also it's difficult to find that genuine connection with one another in some ways where you get a lot of socialness, but not a lot of connection always. And Travis, what I found so inspiring about your journey was the fact that you were able to create that point of connection through your art. You talked about the stage play and like feeling like these were your personal experiences, obviously, but then realizing that other people saw themselves in your work and were able to connect on that level in that really authentic and meaningful way that you just couldn't get from like a tweet or something like that. um we got a question for you, Travis. Do you think being able to use creative expression to tell your mental health story is a way to process your emotions and raise awareness?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Yeah, no
Or
problem. Yeah, this person in the chat was just wondering whether you think being able to use creative expression, in your case, filmmaking, is a way to tell your mental health story, or is a way to both process your emotions and raise awareness.
Yeah, wait, can you rephrase that for me? I'm just trying
Yeah,
to.
I think they're asking about for you to just talk a little bit more about what that looked like for you, how your filmmaking not only was an outlet for you personally, but also a way to kind of shift the conversation, break stigma, break barriers in your community regarding mental health and what we do or don't share with one another.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I answer the question right, I think when I started thinking about, I don't think I was necessarily thinking, I was just doing it. And then I realized that, oh, I'm actually like implementing like my mental health. And I feel like film is therapy for me. You know, when I'm writing, then this phone is about when I'm writing and then when I'm producing it and directing it, I feel like it's three different like therapists for me. And so when I'm writing it, it's like, okay, me, taking everything from my brain. And then hold on, I'm sorry, this phone is about to drive me crazy. Hold on 1 second, I'm sorry.
We can come back to you. I totally understand technology gets the better of us all. Yeah, I love what you said though about you weren't even trying. Like when you did this, it's not like you went into it thinking, I'm gonna do this thing that's going to improve my mental health or improve the mental health of other people. It just kind of happened organically because you were following your feelings and following your passions. And I think that's something that folks can take away from this when thinking about entry points and pathways into this advocacy, that it can be as simple as what comes natural to you, what your natural inclinations are. um all right, have another question. How has your personal mental health journey changed as you've gotten older?
I would say it's definitely grown a lot. Just with growing up, I think it's gonna get better. That's what I tell my students. I think like I do a lot of like research on like I guess just youth development in general, and I've been in this space for a while. So like I just know between the ages of like I guess like 9 to 17, it's really like a struggle because it's your first time hitting all these different points and like transitions in your life. But I think like as you go to college and you start figuring out like what it is for you to be an individual, you start exploring that side of yourself and just like independence. I would say like my mental health journey has gotten a lot better. And being in the like psychology space, I think it's given me a lot of tools and a lot of resources or things that I've already been doing that I'm like, oh, this was a tool. I never thought about it like that. The way that Travis was just saying, like, you just kind of do it and you don't even realize you're doing it is what I feel like has really been a big part of my journey. And as I've gotten older, I guess like not only has it just improved, I've become more critical about and intentional about the things that I do for my mental health. And again, I think that's something that just comes with age. It's definitely helpful to teach kids at a young age so that they can start like incorporating that into their life. But I've probably am at my best mental health space that I've been at like now because I've taken the time and been really intentional about what things bring me joy in my life and what things I want in my space versus like eliminating felt strong. Maybe putting to the side some things that are not suiting me and not really helping me in my life.
Welcome back, Travis. If you are able to answer, feel free to hop in, either continuing kind of what you were talking about with your filmmaking and how you kind of didn't intend to have this impact that it did, but it ultimately did and felt really therapeutic for you. You can feel free to pick back up on that thread. We also were just now answering a question about how your personal mental health has evolved as you've gotten older.
Okay. Hopefully nothing happens because I get so sidetracked easily. But anyway, I think I was just talking about like I just was doing it, as far as like just writing my stories and and telling it to the point where I didn't even realize that I was really talking about my mental health. So that's why I'm like, it was just therapy because I used to have these like journals and I just used to write all of my stories in it, and then I eventually, brought them to life on the screen because I felt like if I was going through it, somebody else is going through it now, and hopefully, they can take something from that and overcome their fears or whatever they're going through in life. So I feel like it's more so like when I'm telling my stories, I kind of just want to inspire the youth or just everybody to tell their stories the way they want to tell it because can't nobody tell your story the way you can tell it, and I think that's very important. As far as like has my mental health grown, is that the question?
Just how has your personal mental health journey changed over the years? What have you learned? How have you grown? How has it changed your relationship to your personal mental health?
Yeah, I think just the older that I got, it's more, I realize how effective mental health is and how important it is because you know in middle school, high school, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna do this and then get over it. But now it's like, I'm gonna do this, and how can I do this to not get back to this, if that makes sense? So, and therapy and just learning what the things are that you need to not get back to that space of where you were before.
Yeah, I think you also talked about how sort of like the community, people like whether that's like racial communities, ethnic, national communities, even like I know we see a lot, at least in the work that I do, men sort of struggling more with being able to talk about their mental health and access care than women sometimes. I think it's important to hear stories from people that share your experiences and like share that you can like feel like you can relate with them. So I think it's extra important that you're sharing your stories and helping people sort of bridge those gaps where they might not have seen themselves before. So just kudos to you. All right, we'll move on to our next question. Um, Let's see. Do you have suggestions on how to empower our suicide prevention nonprofit's teen board to go out and make an impact in our community? How can they work together out in the wild to advocate for mental health? So kind of some boiled down to its parts, like how can you encourage young people to take action in their communities for mental health?
I would say just like encouraging them to think outside the box. I think sometimes like we we hear like the task that needs to be done and we think that there's a certain route that needs to be taken to do it. And sometimes that can be more stressful. Um, but if there's like a creative component to it where it's like just think of anything, try anything. There's nothing wrong with trying something that no one's done before because that usually gets you a lot farther than trying the same things that have been done. You can reach new people in that way. So I just say like open it up to them in that way where it's like there's no particular approach that we're looking for and you going out and talking to people. We just want you to try something and see how it lands.
I agree with. I actually want to pick back up with that what you said, Asia, because thinking outside the box just reminds me of when I was thinking outside the box because I was trying to figure out how to make myself stand out in the film industry. And I'm just like, all my films focusing on mental health. Like nobody, I don't see that on TV. I don't see them talking about mental health. And so that was one of the ways that I thought that since people watch TV, they're gonna watch this, and now they are realizing that these people are going through things and that they are probably going through and at home. So I think that's one way as well.
Yeah, I think y'all touched on two. Oh, sorry, Asia, go for it.
Sorry, I keep thinking more because Travis says something good, and then I
Please,
start
please
thinking.
do.
But yeah, I think there's also just this like fear amongst youth, and I mean everyone, even like adults, of being weird or like being perceived as like, this is so different. Like how are people gonna receive it? Just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen is like, and I tell myself this every day, guys. So like I'm not speaking from like a high horse. I have to continuously like remind myself, keep pushing the boundary and try new things, even if it is uncomfortable. But like if we don't push the boundary, what changes are we gonna make in this field?
Yeah, I think that that fear is such a core fear, especially at that age of like standing out. And being able to relinquish that fear and get comfortable with being uncomfortable is such a skill. Um, and advocacy is a great way to do that because you really do need to put yourself out there in a lot of ways, whether you're speaking with a legislator or telling your story in a creative format. That takes a lot of bravery and courage. And I think it's a skill that is useful beyond advocacy too. And what I was going to say before was that the two of you touched on two great ways to sort of to the question of like how do you encourage young people to start to take action. Um, Travis, where you talked about seeing a lack. You were like, "Oh, I'm not seeing this on TV. I'm not seeing these conversations happening. I'm going to do something about that, or this is where I can help fill that gap." And Asia talking about sort of following the thing that you're passionate about and like not thinking about like there's no one way to accomplish something and being able to think beyond and bring in what your unique skill set, what your unique ideas are, I think is super important. So starting from that point of passion, that point of strength and empowerment can be really helpful too. All right, I think we have time for one more question. Jennifer asks, what role did your parents or guardians play in your life and supporting your mental health, if any?
I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute before everybody started talking again. I feel like the role that, well, my parents were like separated, so that was kind of that was one thing that was really affecting my mental health. I feel like weren't really involved in my mental health. How can I even put this? Hmm. Let me think about how to put this before I say it out loud.
Totally fine. And you only share what's comfortable. Also, if there were other family members or other adults in your life that maybe played a more crucial role, you can feel free to share on that. Yeah.
I hate to say this, but I don't think any of my family supported like my mental health, or I had anybody to really talk to in my family as far as like mental health. It was more so when I went to school and I went into my guidance counselor office and met my college advisor. That's where I just felt like I could just express everything. I could say what I needed to say. She was helping me with the next career in my life and like where I needed to go after high school. So I felt like I found a person since I couldn't find anybody in my family or my friend groups. I found that one person that really helped me. To this day, I'm still talking to her, and I'm still like we're still communicating. And I feel like yeah, it was my college advisor. It wasn't really my parents, which that sounds bad, but it's because it's this cycle that's going on in my family where nobody talks about mental health. So now that I'm talking about it, breaking that cycle now, I'm kind of like trying to go back and let them know like your mental health is important. Stop taking that out on your kids or your sisters and your brothers and having that cycle repeat, focus on your mental health so that you won't affect everybody else's.
Yeah, I don't think that sounds bad. I think it's actually really inspiring to be able to both recognize the harmful pattern and then actively try to step out of it. And I think it's great that you were able to find an adult in your life that you could confide in. Even if it was, a college advisor or someone who you wouldn't really think to play that role in someone's life. I think that's really special, which again, for folks in our audience who work with young people, I think that just goes to show like someone in the chat said, the impact of one adult with one present adult can have in a young person's life, being that safe space for someone. And moreover, I think when we're talking about local action, like in that example I gave at the beginning of this presentation about the South Carolina school board that voted to save the 10 mental health counselors, right? School-based mental health resources are so, so, so crucial for getting support to young people who might not otherwise ever receive it or ever hear about mental health. So that's where local action can really make such a deep impact. Even if you think, oh, it's just 10 school counselors at one school, but that can make a world of difference for the young people who are touched by them. Asia, did you have anything to add? Or Travis as well before we wrap up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to add one thing. I feel like the reason why I keep bringing up my college advisor is because I feel personally she opened up that for us to have that conversation, which got me to speak up a little bit more when I was in high school and to the point where we built that connection. And so maybe I feel like because my parents didn't really ask about, how was like today's day, or how are you feeling today, or why are you acting this way? It felt like they didn't care. But when my college advisor really stepped up and asked, like, are you feeling okay today? Like that really meant something to me because I'm like, oh, she cares. Like now I care enough to say what I need to say.
Yeah, on my journey, I would say my parents unintentionally supported my mental health. I feel like not everyone, especially again, I'll keep saying like mental health is kind of a nuanced like thing. Not that it hasn't existed for decades and decades, but just even talking about it. So like I don't think my family until I got super into it, like psychology and all this stuff, never had really the language or the strategies written down or like the manual on how to do mental health. But they were really supportive in like making sure that I had different extracurricular activities that I was a part of to be great outlets for me. I think soccer, like the fact that I took it from being in elementary to like college shows just how much of a difference it made in my life personally. And like I grew up with very close family members. I'm from New York. Shout out my people who are from New York. I grew up with a lot of family around me. And while my parents might have not been the only people that I turned to, having other family members that I could talk to about different things was really helpful for me. And I think like that really was like key to my growth as a child, like having those pockets of other family members that I can talk to, even if it's not like my immediate parents. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for sharing. I know we're coming up on time and Jackie Z has some closing info to share, but just thank you again for sharing your stories and for just doing the work that you do. It's been really incredible to be able to work with you all. So I hope everyone in the chat checks out the resources that Travis and Asia helped create in the Spotlight on Youth Mental Health Advocacy, and we'll share that back out in the chat here in a second.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jackie, and a huge thank you to Asia and Travis. It is not easy to come on and talk about your mental health and share personally and so insightfully, and you both did so in a really beautiful way. It's really cool just to see where your different advocacy journeys have taken you, the different outlets you're able to use, the ways that you connect with your communities. It is truly so inspiring. And so thank you so much for the work that you're doing every day. And to everyone who has been joining us, who's been sharing in the chat, asking questions, thank you to you all as well. Just a few reminders. I know there were some questions about this. This session was being recorded and it will be emailed out to everyone by the end of the week. So don't worry, you'll have it. You'll be able to share it out. And please do share it with your networks. And all of the resources that we discussed today, the advocacy resources, the supporting young minds resources, all of those will be coming in the follow-up as well if you didn't get them out of the chat. So all those links will be coming. I just want to say a final thank you all to Travis and Asia and Jackie for being here today and sharing. And thank you to our audience. We will be closing out, but keep an eye on your emails for those follow-up materials, and we'll be sure to stay connected. Thank you all.